why would the government even be allowed to have this stuff in their possession if a higher sentience, you know, either didn't want it or wanted it back? And I'm just like, I'm like, well, but the fact is we do.
Do you believe the US government is in possession of time machine craft?
I think if these things that crashed are time machines, then absolutely.
And you think they're time machines?
I do.
Aliens could potentially be us in the future.
Do you believe in aliens?
And we are fucking aliens all the time.
They can breathe our air, they can have sex with us, they can speak our languages. There's just this suite of characteristics that scream time-traveling future humans.
Dr. Michael P. Masters is a biological anthropologist and professor at Montana Tech University. He's written 3 books, Identified Flying Objects, The Extratempestrial Model, and recently, Revelation, The Future Human Past. In these works, he lays out a theoretical framework that he's been developing for his entire life, and one that, in my opinion, best explains the UFO phenomena. That aliens are humans from the future who figured out time travel and are coming back to visit us.
If you think about how we're actually evolving as a species, their eyes are sort of slits. You're gonna, have more screen time going forward.
Senses essential for hunter-gathering like smell and hearing matter less than ever. And the gray aliens have very small noses and ears. There's even an evolutionary concept called neoteny, where a species' distant descendants look like its current children. And gray aliens are constantly described as childlike.
They were about the size of the kids. They were, about 3 feet tall.
What's more, the list of credentialed UFO researchers that believe the time travel hypothesis is endless. Navy Commander George Hoover, who held the top secret clearance for most of his life, admitted that the beings in the Roswell crash were just time-traveling humans. And Hermann Oberth, the father of German rocketry and Wernher von Braun's mentor, said that UFOs likely don't traverse large distances in space, they jump from one time-space coordinate to another. Even Spielberg may have included a couple of time travel-related hints in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Because at the end, you see the World War II pilots come out, they haven't aged at all.
That's true.
That's a subtle little, hey, these guys are time travelers.
Einstein was right.
According to Deadpool creator Robert Liefeld, Spielberg said to Robert in 1993, "What's easier to believe? That we are being monitored by aliens from another world, or that we are monitoring ourselves and studying us from the future?" And in a recent Newsweek article, Blink-182 frontman and To the Stars Academy founder Tom DeLonge said, "These things aren't coming from other planets. These things might be coming through time."
Paul Hynek always said, one of J. Allen Hynek's sons, how would they find us and why would they care? They would find us because we're their ancestors. Why would they care about this planet unless they're said to inherit it?
As for the craft, UFOs themselves may simply be time machines. Experiencers almost always report missing time or time anomalies. Strong electromagnetism comes off the craft, which, as we'll get into, makes sense if these crafts are time machines. And finally, many contactees report having to take chemical rinses in what's speculated to be antiseptic liquid, perhaps so they don't contaminate the future with a pathogen that's already been wiped out.
I don't think they're necessarily doing anything to us. I think it's for them. I think it's self-preservation, that something in the future requires them to sample gametes from the past.
In this interview, we cover it all. How we might be unwitting participants in an intertemporal breeding program, how the phenomenon relates to biological evolution, and how the crafts would work as time machines in a conventional physics framework. We talk about the nature of time, time loops, timeline wars, psychic remote viewing, and Mike even shares his own personal experience with the future human visitors.
My eyes went black, and all of a sudden, I feel all of this information coming in my brain. And the other individual standing to my left occasionally would say, "Did you get that? Did you get that?" I'm like, uh-huh. And I can see it coming in. I have no idea what it is.
Wow. And I've talked to people that have espoused that it was almost like a QR code. Downloaded in their brain was the communication.
Along the way, we drop new revelations from David Grusch, the UFO whistleblower from my last video that blew the cover on UFO reverse engineering programs.
I talked to people who really did analyze the stuff from the real deal stuff, and it's super weird. It's like heavy element, europium, californium stuff. It's like in these atomic arrangements that make like no sense.
So on that note, hit subscribe and converge with your future self as you watch today's American Alchemist, Dr. Michael Masters.
Different parts of the brain have different activities.
But you know that, don't you?
Maybe you should interview me.
And this place is interesting.
Where are we?
Yeah. Would you bring me back in time for this conversation or something, man?
Feels like it.
Trippy. Oh.
I'm excited to speak with you.
Yeah, same, man.
Yeah.
Even if it isn't a tripped out 1950s diner.
I don't know what happened. We just ended up
Yeah.
here. So you've written 3 books now, 2 of which I've read and are fantastic. Identified Flying Objects and the Extratempestrial Model. And in the second book, you really prove out kind of the theoretical framework for how a lot of what we consider extraterrestrial visitors are actually just humans from the future. I think one of the most remarkable things from your book is you cite the free Edgar Mitchell study.
It's the largest study of contactees, abductees, experiencers in general.
The time they published that study I was referencing, I think they had about 3,500.
Yeah.
And it's up about 5,000 now. So they're continuing to bring more data in, and then further analyses might change some of the ways that we look at these things.
Yeah. And you say that 52% of the respondents, contactees, experience hominid-like creatures in their kind of contact experience. And then 85% of those cases, well, this is what I find fascinating, have a friendly experience, friendly or neutral experience, which might show that if they are sort of future trans-temporal humans or something, they show a care for us in a way that will maybe help us sort of ascend into them or ensure their own sustenance in a way.
Yeah, and what's another interesting thing you can tease out of that is the ones who did interact with less human forms had a more negative experience. And so you kind of have to break that down. Is it because it was scarier? Is there more ontological shock when something that looks like a giant bug is abducting you that can control your mind and interact with you telepathically and give you images and all of these crazy downloads? But it is interesting that the most reported form is human.
Yeah.
And you might expect that. I think we talked about this previously, where you might expect that based on where we are in time, because in the same way that, you know, here in Los Angeles or wherever the hell you took me, you have people that you interact with more who are local, who are here.
Yeah.
Because they're just there. They're closer to you in proximate geographic space. But it may be similar with time, where you expect to see people from closer to your relative time because you're closer to them. Whereas these ones that are more distant, maybe the praying mantis looking humans, because I don't think they're actual insects or they would have 6 legs by definitions, one caveat. But we expect to see them less because we're one tiny blip on their radar. It's just, we're less likely to run into someone from Malaysia or South Africa and Oklahoma, but we see Oklahomans all the time because they're just there.
Yeah.
North Sentinel Island is a remote island off the coast of India, and its people have had minimal contact with the outside world, save for a few encounters with anthropologists and Christian missionaries. Fully clothed, pale-skinned, and speaking a foreign language, these people must seem like aliens from another planet to the North Sentinelese. And if you're the majority of North Sentinel natives who didn't interact with these visitors personally, you probably wouldn't believe the ones who did. Over time, these contact stories would get relegated to mythology and lore. We might be making the same wrong assumptions when it comes to UFOs and alien contact experiences. We have our own mythological contact stories that half the population believes while the other doesn't. And we assume these alien contact experiences are interactions with beings from another planet. But maybe our so-called alien visitors aren't from far away, they're from far ahead.
Just probabilistically, the idea that life in a completely foreign, planet would evolutionarily converge to look exactly like us or very similar to us, speak our language in many cases, as you talk about a lot of these
Breathe
abduction
our
experiences.
air,
Breathe
have
our
sex
air,
with us.
all of that. Yeah. It just feels super unlikely. And maybe the one argument to that is that, Dave Grusch talked about this, they could somehow, they're so advanced that they could program something like us.
It's either extraterrestrial and we're seeing bioengineered beings that look similar to us for ease of communication and acceptance, maybe. And that is like almost like an avatar for the intelligence behind, the ghost behind the machine or whatever. There's that possibility, I suppose, and that actually would make more sense that they were engineered specifically to look like that and it wasn't natural.
If they're trying to make something that's less jarring to us, that looks and acts more like us, just make it like us.
Just make it like us.
Why make it look like what we're going to look like in another 20, 30, 40,000 years?
Totally.
But I have thought about that idea of avatars before, and it's actually a big part of the storyline in my most recent book, Revelation, The Future Human Past, where there is some indication that they're making sort of robotic, droid avatars, whatever you want to call them, but potentially, and we're not far from this technology now, biologically constructed ones, where we move away from moving parts and things that need oiled and can break down to using that advanced knowledge of genetics and genetic manipulation, something probably centuries beyond CRISPR technology, and creating forms that can perform certain tasks. So I would agree with Grusch in the sense that some of these could be created, but then the question is, who's creating them?
A quick word from our amazing sponsor for today's episode. If you've seen our episode, Are Mushrooms Aliens?, you'll remember the Finnish mushroom master, the guest of that episode, Tero Isokauppila. He's always been a big supporter of the show, and he's one of my best friends. And he's been nice enough to sponsor this episode. His company, Four Sigmatic, has an amazing new Think Starter. It's coffee, coconut creamer, and mushroom blend. The coffee contains my two personal favorite mushrooms, chaga and lion's mane, which are incredibly good for immunity and brain function. People often ask me, Jesse, how are you so cool and calm and smart? I'm just kidding, no one asks me that. But if they did, I would give a lot of credit to Tero and his adaptogenic mushrooms. They cleanse your gut, help you think clearer, relax, and perform at your highest level. Seriously, they've helped me level up and change the lives of many of my friends. Please click the link in the description and insert discount code ALIEN for 20% off. It'd be a big support to the show if you did that. Now back to the show. As a species, we are becoming domesticated. The average male sperm count is just 59% of what it was in 1973. And testosterone has been dropping 1% year over year since the 80s.
So I picked 4 cities in the United States that had different environments, and we showed that pesticide was significantly related to the men's sperm count.
A wolf is to a dog what a 19th century human will probably be to a 22nd century human. So infertility may become a concern in the future. And consistently, these aliens seem very interested in extracting human gametes.
You have Antonio Villas-Boas, which you write about in 57, describing kind of mating with the future human or extraterrestrial being fully doing it.
Yeah.
Getting busy.
Getting busy.
And you talk about Barney Hill reluctantly saying that semen samples were taken from him. Jim Peniston, Rendlesham Forest incident in 1980. He recalls a contact experience with extraterrestrials or future humans that say they want to maintain genetic diversity and not get wiped off the planet. And so they specifically need, genetic samples from current humans. So what's going on? Are we in some sort of bizarre intertemporal breeding program or something?
I mean, you're right. That is one of the most common themes. It's ubiquitous across these abduction cases. And seemingly mostly throughout the 70s, 80s, 90s. You don't really hear about it as much anymore, but almost every male that was taken would have sperm extracted. Females have developing fetuses implanted, taken out, eggs being taken. So you have to ask why. You see these patterns emerge and you have to ask why. And I think a lot of what I've tried to do with my research is not speculate about what's going to happen, where we're going. I went out of my way to avoid that in all of my books. But we can look at what's happening now and what's happened in the past. And we see a 60% reduction in sperm counts in males in only the last 40 years in the developed world, a 50% reduction across the entire world.
A 2011 study showed that average sperm count is down to 47 million per milliliter.
Below 40, you start having trouble conceiving.
Jesus.
Yeah.
There's all of these things that are happening that could contribute to problems with genetics in the future. And I think that's what they specifically told Jim Peniston. They said, we're you. We come from 8,000 years in the future. And yeah, that they're having problems with reproduction and they're taking these gametes. And I think not only that, but also the fact that Antonio Villas-Boas had physical intercourse with this woman, who he describes as a woman. She looks a little bit different than women that he knew, slightly higher cheekbones, pointier chin, but all of the same parts that you need to have sex with someone. Would you get those with a species that evolved on a different planet? Would they even have anything close to DNA? Could you take DNA from them? So I think all of these things together indicate that we are the same species. If this hybridization program is real, you have the ability to reproduce.
So it does feel like humans are becoming sort of domesticated, a la your, the sperm count stats that you've cited.
We are. We know we've been becoming domesticated for about the last 30,000 years. Especially since agriculture, we have a selection for more pro-social behaviors. When we were nomadic hunter-gatherers, we could just move around. Someone's being an asshole, you just go somewhere else. But once we started to settle down in cities, there was obviously a lot of conflict. We can see that in the archaeological record. It's an aspect of biological anthropology called bioarchaeology. And we still go to war with each other, but we seem to be moving away from that. A lot of it's because we're domesticating ourselves through the selection for more pro-social behaviors where we can just get alone.
We have to, because we have nukes. It's just mutually assured destruction. It's cataclysmic if we continue our sort of ways.
Over the years, humans have collected satellite data of electromagnetic and geomagnetic anomalies on Earth. And when you start to cross-reference these electromagnetic anomalies against the significant UFO instances over the last 200 years, you start to see a ridiculous correlation, according to UFO researcher Steve Mera.
And we want to try and promote the fact that ufology consists of so much more than just a light in the sky.
Not to mention, if you could create a traversable wormhole that allowed for time travel, you'd see a ton of electromagnetic fallout around it. As future American Alchemy guest Eric Wargo writes, a portal or UFO itself, as shown by the intergalactic wormhole in Interstellar, would appear visually as a convex three-dimensional object having volume, not as a hole or doorway.
And I remember being at Skinwalker Ranch, which is this famous kind of paranormal hotspot in the Uinta, basin in Utah, and a tri-field meter going off.
Right before we left, we grabbed the tri-field meters. It had full battery. It's flashing, it's now dead.
Because there was a lot of electromagnetic activity. Historically, there's been a lot of electromagnetic activity there.
Yeah.
And so, are we just witnessing wormholes, or?
I kind of get the sense that many of these craft are time machines themselves. A lot of the saucer-shaped, disc-shaped craft have a form consistent with the function of manipulating space-time. So maybe it helps in moving through space-time in some way if they are in fact our time-traveling descendants. But there might be more going on. It could have something to do with energy sources or drawing energy from the environment that helps power the craft.
So maybe portals like Skinwalker Ranch and others with high electromagnetic and nuclear activity are the launch and landing pads for UFOs, not the White House lawn, Vandenberg, or the tarmac at LAX. If UFOs were simply entering our atmosphere from space, you'd probably expect some sort of electromagnetic superhighway coming to and from Earth. But if you talk to any SETI scientist trying to pick up communication signals from space, they'll say the same thing, that space itself is remarkably quiet.
When I started on interviewing people that were totally genuine, and of course uncovering the kind of legacy program that I've talked about, I lost a lot of sleep. I couldn't even conceptualize stuff. Even for me, my worldview, which I consider myself an open person, I had trouble even understanding it. And I went back to the Fermi paradox. I'm like, well, why isn't there an overt presence? Why would the government even be, this is how deep I went. I'm like, why would the government even be allowed to have this stuff in their possession if a higher sentience, either didn't want it or wanted it back or, whatever. You can make up a bunch of notional scenarios that, kind of sound sci-fi. And I'm just I kind of went, well, but the fact is we do.
Do you believe the U.S. government is in possession of time machine craft?
I think if these things that crashed are time machines, then absolutely.
And you think they're time machines?
I do.
Yeah.
Again, just the disc-shaped craft, because we have this expression in biology that form follows function.
Yeah.
And the form of these machines seems to indicate the function of manipulating space-time and traveling forward and backwards.
And that's just based on Frank Tipler's work?
Not just. It's this whole line of evolution stemming from Einstein's original 1915 paper. You have all of these solutions to his field equations. You have Lenz theory, frame dragging. You have these solutions that show you can tip over those light cones through the rotation of massive objects. We've tested this and shown that even the Earth, as an extremely small planet relative to other exoplanets, also creates this frame dragging effect. Not long after that, you had Van Stockham. You had the Gödel universe, where you imagine this infinitely large disk, imagine a galaxy that's infinitely large, where it's creating that same rotational frame dragging and bending over light cones so that you can move into the past. And then importantly, in the 1970s with Frank Tipler, that's all shrunk down to the size that's finite, and it's a rapidly rotating ring, sphere, or disk, as he said. And he shows that you can have all of these same frame dragging, light cone bending over properties with something that sounds exactly like a UFO. They're seen rotating, they're seen popping in and out of space-time.
I mean, I'm not saying our theoretical frameworks are correct, but we really do have physics explanations on how the UAPs jump around or whatever. That's totally an effect of an Alcubierre-style warp bubble. So that would be light being blue shifted into the ultraviolet as it's lensed across the bubble that the craft creates.
It's a blue shift not just in light that takes it up into that short wave radiation area that causes temporary damage to people, but also time is shifted as a result of that. Like everything within that region in and around this, what Jim Peniston called a sphere of influence, where he felt like he was walking through water. Like everything within proximity to that craft was different, it was shifted. So there's a lot of things like that that indicate that in proximity to these craft, they are manipulating the rate at which time flows. And if you have that ability, what's stopping you from going back through it?
But then we take seriously the accounts, these contact cases, where you have things like Corporal Armando Valdez in Chile in the 1970s, where he disappears entirely from the 6 men in his platoon. 15 minutes later, he reappears, but 5 days passed for him, as indicated by the wristwatch, which reads 5 days in the future. His beard has grown out. He was just shaven before that.
Travis Walton wakes up after his abduction experience and, he has a fully, beard or whatever. He had shaved right before his experience.
Yeah, and he may have been gone for 5 days. That one's harder to corroborate, but it was shown that the trees in and around the place he was taken, the ones facing that side, grew faster. Linda Jones in Manchester, UK, she was running with her children away from this UFO, and the grass was growing rapidly under her feet as she was running.
The grass seemed to move at the side of us and at the front of us.
Amy Rylance is probably one of my favorite cases in this regard, because she was taken, her friend Petra watched her being taken through the window. All of a sudden, they get this call that she's been found at a petrol station 790 kilometers away. But what's interesting is she claims to have been on board that craft with a man. She said specifically in an interview, I don't call him an alien, I call him a man. He had all of the same physiological characteristics of a man. She claims she was with them for 5 to 7 days. Clearly, they traveled 790 kilometers to drop her off, but also seemingly went back in time to drop her off closer to the point at which she was taking, and likely because her friend's freaking out, her husband's freaking out, the cops think she was murdered.
One case, one of my favorite, Udo Wartena, he got a tour. He didn't know shit about UFOs or electromagnetics, of course, because he's a miner. But they explain that there's these counter-rotating flywheels. So it's like where you have those maglev trains, where it's above it's a frictionless surface, which is why they can go so fast and use less energy, where they're spinning these flywheels, and then these magnets, these electromagnets are forcing those around, and something about the counter rotation of those creates this electromagnetic field, which I think is important for their anti-gravity propulsion, and importantly, the manipulation of space-time.
So do you have a sense of the current engineering limitations on our own ability to build these time machines?
A, if these are time machines. B, if we've received them as crashed or landed vehicles, which was an interesting thing to hear that's come out of David Grusch's testimony, is that seemingly some of them are gifted, intact objects. That sort of gives us a leg up. But then it's still this question of what is time if there's time travel?
I talked to people who really did analyze the stuff from the real deal stuff, and it's super weird. It's like heavy element, europium, californium stuff. It's like in these atomic arrangements that make like no sense. This is through X-ray diffraction, where they can image the shadows of the atomic pairs and stuff. And it's like, why is all these crazy heavy elements in this like weird ceramic metal hull structure, and we don't understand the emergent metamaterial properties.
And we
like,
can't,
what's going on?
And we can't configure atoms. You can get down to what, 0.2 nanometers or something as far as
there's certain techniques out there that they're augmenting some X-ray diffraction technologies where you can get down to sub-angstrom. But most techniques are like 2 to 5 angstrom, which you can't directly image the atoms, but you can see the shadows and some of the configurations. But we're getting to where we could actually image the atoms.
It's interesting. What comes to mind when you say the UFOs themselves are a time machine, I've been kind of really researching this mid-century inventor named Townsend Brown. And he was super into anti-gravity. It was kind of the nominal story of, he'd create these like super high electrical charges over short distances. He was funded by a guy named Agnew Bainson. And Bainson is quoted as saying very weird effects occur with high electricity over short distances. And what's funny is the deeper cut on Townsend Brown is he was super into time travel, and he would talk about it with his daughter Linda, and he even had a confidant who I think is written about pseudonymously in this great book called The Man Who Mastered Gravity by a guy named Paul Shotskin, and his name is Morgan, and Morgan becomes a source for the book, and he's writing to Paul Shotskin, and Paul's being a little thick-headed about what is the actual machine, what are these gravitators, and at some point Morgan kind of blows up and he goes, "It's a fucking time machine." And so you think that maybe past scientists have actually figured out time travel?
Yeah, well, I think they figured out that these machines are time machines. Herman Oberth said the same thing. You have General George Hoover, who also said, these are time machines. These are future humans, specifically. In the 1940s, we didn't have the technology, we didn't have the comprehension of material sciences and the physics in order to do this. But what I feel is happening is that the visitors themselves are pushing us in this direction, or rather pulling maybe is a better word for it. Well, you have all of these Congress people who really weren't paying attention to much of this. And I think it's gonna be disclosure from the ones that have been hiding from us this whole time.
Yeah. I was on the phone yesterday with Robert Hastings, who wrote UFOs and Nukes, and he's telling me that he feels like he's being subliminally guided towards disclosing and doing his work. And I'd be lying if I were to say I didn't have sort of similar experiences personally. Have you had any experiences like that?
I don't think many people are deep into this unless it stems from something. Whether that be a light in the sky they can't explain, or some obscure memories from childhood of a craft outside their window or a shadowy figure at their bed. I got into this when I was 8 years old because I had what I now understand was a moment of conscious precognition where I visualized together, I talk about this at the beginning of both my books, an early human, a modern human, and this archetypal gray alien, and then the thoughts that came with that, which I feel is just now me putting that information back in past me, because I would eventually do that. And then it's this closed time-like loop of sorts. So that was kind of my motivation. And I've been driven to study physics and astronomy and then change my major to biological anthropology to study the humanoid form associated with them, because I was led to do that. I remember the exact moment standing behind Morton Hall at Ohio University. There was this little voice in my head that said, maybe we should explore it this way. Maybe we're all experiencing that. You just don't notice it until you really start to reflect on the way everything's connected and start to put those pieces together, especially with regard to the synchronicities and who you meet and when you meet them.
Can you say at all when you had your future human contact experience what was communicated to you?
Well, it's interesting you asked that specifically because it was an intervention. I didn't tell anybody this.
Yeah.
I was washing dishes at my sink, my wife's sitting on the couch, and I just thought, I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
I just want to get this last book done and just kind of slowly back away from all of these conversations. I was traveling a lot, conferences, TV shoots. I was exhausted.
From the UFO topic specifically?
UFO top.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't like going to go blow my brains out in a closet or something. Like,
Yeah.
I was tired of this.
I've had that experience many times.
You
man.
feel
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
taxing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I didn't tell anybody. I thought about telling my wife. I thought about being, I didn't tell her. I didn't say anything to anyone. When they approached me physically, face to face, this individual, there were two individuals present. One pulls up a chair so close that his knee goes into my crotch, and I have a very strong fight or flight response, and it was very much fight. And he looks at me in the eyes and says, I can tell you're very upset about this, but I need to be this close for this to work. And all of a sudden, happiness returns. Next thing he said is what got in my head a little. He said, actually, he's not the right pronoun, they. It's all they. That's the only pronoun they ever used, we and they. There's never a sense of ego or individualism at all. In fact, I came away with this with no sense of ego, or at least a very diminished form of it. But they said, we know you've been thinking about quitting lately, and we'd really prefer you didn't do that. And I said, how could you possibly know that? I never told anybody that. I never even spoke those words out loud. It was a thought in my head. And they said, once you know who we are, you'll know how we know that. And then telepathically, I communicated future humans. And they said, so you know how we did that? I said, uh-huh. And then the conversation went in a lot of different directions. The vast majority of it was entirely telepathic. At some point, we just stopped using vocalized speech. And even though there were two individuals, all of the voices were the same voices. And this is the thing that blows my mind the most. And I remember Terry Lovelace talking about this when he met Betty Rubble. He just heard her voice in his head in the same voice. If you're not articulating something, it's not vibrating your malleus, incus, and stapes to send the signal, why does it still sound like that individual? It's mind-blowing. But the three of us are communicating telepathically over the course of, I would guess, another 10, 15 minutes. A lot of other things are exchanged. I had questions, they had questions. But the main point of it was that they wanted, if I was okay with it, they're very polite, extremely polite. If I was okay with it, they said, we'll black your eyes out and give you 3 things that will be important at a future time.
What were that?
I don't have access to it. They told me I wouldn't have access to it. They said, we need to put this information in your brain if you're okay with it. And by this point, it was very clear who they were, their abilities, hive mind consciousness, interacting in this way. I trust them and also realized that in various ways I had been interacting with them the whole time. That little voice in my head when I changed majors, a conversation they referenced right before I went to a conference at Rice University, where I thought it was just all in my mind. They referenced that conversation that we had just prior to me going to this conference. So I agreed, and that's exactly what happened. My eyes went black. I'm still staring at the same individual. In fact, by this point, it got very difficult to turn my head. I was kind of just mesmerized. I think that's the word some use. My eyes went black, and all of a sudden, I feel all of this information coming in my brain. And the other individual standing to my left occasionally would say, did you get that? Did you get that? I'm like, and I can see it coming in. I have no idea what it is.
Wow.
It's in there.
Yeah.
I can't access it. I agreed to have it put there.
It's like you were partitioned or something.
Yeah, maybe. But what's crazy is the reaction. This was at the beginning of a conference. There's a lot going on. There's a party, Halloween party. Some of my best friends from the UFO community are there. We're gonna jam tunes, play music.
Yeah.
Been wanting to play Travis Walton's guitar with Micah Hanks for all this time. And I stood up once they released me from this. Slowly I could see this individual again, or them, in this manifested form. I turn, I get up, I walk through what's now a very crowded room of people from this balcony. A woman puts her hand on my arm and says, "Are you okay?" And I was going, like I couldn't lift my head. It felt like it was a 50-pound weight tied to my forehead. I walk out of the VIP room where this had happened on the balcony, down to my room, which is about 5 doors away.
Where is all of this?
At a conference hotel in Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Almost exactly 1 year ago.
Yeah.
Lay down on the bed, lay down backwards, feet still on the ground, and slept for 13 hours straight.
Wow.
Wake up, still with my feet on the ground, still with all my clothes on, and just started crying uncontrollably.
Wow.
Not because I was happy, sad, confused, nothing. Like whatever happened.
Did it feel cathartic? Did you feel like you were letting out pain or anything?
It was
I
just couldn't control it.
Interesting.
I cried for hours. I had to be on a panel the next day with a bunch of people.
How was that?
Fine, because I controlled the crying. I went and got breakfast. Unfortunately, it was sat right by the cash register where all of these people gather for their Sunday brunch. And I'm just losing my goddamn mind at this point. And there's all these people coming, walking right. I was hoping to be like back in a corner or something. Didn't get that. Come back to my room, still crying. Go down to give a book to an individual who was working at the registration table. And all of a sudden, the same individual kind of materializes in this empty hallway, walks past me, put his hand on my shoulder and says, "Are you okay?" I go, "Uh-huh." That's all I could say, "Uh-huh." And all of the time this is happening is, "Uh-huh." Like I'm processing, I'm doing what I'm supposed to, I'm getting the information.
The individual's name or?
Yeah. I know both of their names, but again, these aren't. This is what I mean when we talk about reconceptualizing what it means to be human.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as who is this individual.
You think of them as almost,
I wasn't talking to that individual.
They're generic emissaries.
I was talking to the same they that knows my thoughts enough to reference two very specific moments of interaction. Or one wasn't. I was just thinking, I don't want to do this anymore as I'm washing my damn dishes. They knew that thought.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about individuals, but that individual who's a part of this reappeared as I'm walking through this hallway, takes that residual, whatever it was. Again, it wasn't negative. I wasn't scared by this. I wasn't upset by it. I just couldn't stop crying, but I needed to because I was on an important panel about 2 or 3 hours later.
Yeah.
So it was an effort to sort of quell the ontological shock. If there was a part of that, it's hard to say there wasn't, but also just whatever was happening, whatever reaction my brain had to being force-fed information in this way in a very short period of time in a little primitive monkey brain that couldn't handle it.
So then you think they're walking among us?
They absolutely are, yeah.
Wow. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it is. That one gets a little deep with people.
Yeah.
I think there'll be a guttural response to everything I just said.
Yeah.
The walking among us thing, I think, is a trigger point for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Maybe that happens at a later time.
Yeah. Sure.
But I think it's an obvious realization. I don't think we even need to say it.
Yeah.